Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, did you know there's a skill many men never learn that ends up seriously limiting your professional success and satisfaction in your love and sex life? I put together a free guide to explain this unknown skill and give you exactly what you need to use it today. Get it by heading over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144. That's 44144. You'll also get access to Man Alive outtakes, raw footage, and bonus videos you can only get there. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I am thrilled to be here today with an amazing man who works with solopreneurs or entrepreneurs who want to be more of an authority, want to be seen as an authority, who have a vision, who have a message, and really want to be known in the world for it. So welcome, Michael Neely. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Shanna. It's so great to actually be here with you today.
Yeah, I'm glad we're doing this. So for those of you who haven't met Michael, Michael is a former professional actor and medieval knight. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. Turned writer, motivational speaker, personal development coach, and host of the critically acclaimed podcast, Consciously Speaking. And you're starting a new podcast, I hear, By This, Not That, which is for entrepreneurs as a guide to the tools of the trade, featuring different reviews of technology and trainings you need to become a successful solopreneur in the digital marketplace today. And Michael has appeared in films with Mel Gibson and Kevin Costner and performed off-Broadway, had recurring roles in several popular soap operas. So he uses, his acting and talents of being seen and being visible to really train and support heart-centered entrepreneurs in building their platforms through podcasting, summits, speaking from stage, and getting published. So you've had an interesting life. I love it. When were you a medieval knight?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I started that right out of college, actually. I did a little stint right when I graduated. I strangely enough joined the military. I was going to fly jets for the Marine Corps, but had a medical discharge. And so then I kind of like, all right, well, I got my degree in acting. I might as well start to pursue it. And I heard about this place in Southern California called Medieval Times.
Huh.
And so I went in, got a job, started training to joust and sword fight, and I stayed with them for 6 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I became the head knight and show manager, and I went around opening different locations throughout the country, hiring and training other knights and sword fighters.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then after I left them, I went on to continue jousting for the New York Renaissance Fair for another 6 years during summers while I was pursuing acting work in New York City.
Wow. Okay. So you really did spend a long time as a knight.
12 years.
Awesome. And now, you really support people in getting their message out there, getting their vision out there. And so I'd love to focus today on how someone can become an authority, right? Because, being an authority is what has people come to you. People buy what you have, people, clients, and you end up with a waiting list of clients. So let's look with your expertise at how does someone actually become an authority?
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting concept because of the way times have changed, specifically in the last 20 or 30 years with, the internet and other elements of communication constantly evolving. But think about just being an authority in the first place. The word author is inherently in it. And it's because, and we've all heard the expression, so-and-so wrote the book on blank, whatever that was.
Yep.
Because if you wrote a book on something, if you were an author, you were perceived to be an expert in that particular subject matter.
Uh-huh.
And of course, nowadays, with there being so many platforms and ways for people to get their message out there, that has really evolved. And, the way I teach authority now is based on what I consider the 4 foundational pillars of authority, which are starting out very quite simply like this we're doing right now as a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's another way of expressing your expertise with the world. And that is, one of the first foundational pillars. And then from there, virtual summits is a natural flow. Speaking from stage, we all see these TEDx talks now that are so popular. And beyond that, even just people doing Facebook Live, they've got this opportunity now where the world has become their stage through technology. And so that's, speaking is another opportunity. And then, of course, still writing your book. And so how to work all 4 of those elements in an exponential way that builds their power and makes it easeful, because you can repurpose a lot of content in the process.
Right.
Authority, there is an art to it. So.
Right. Okay. Well, I want to get into the art, and I'm just imagining that, as there are more and more outlets in the world, it's fantastic because people can get out there and be seen. And yet at the same time, that means many, many more people are getting out there and being seen. And so I would imagine, I guess I'd like to hear what you're finding about what makes someone actually stand out now that there is this bigger and bigger crowd.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And it's interesting because I harken back to my acting career. When I first joined the Screen Actors Guild, I got some statistics around that. And one of those was that the Screen Actors Guild at the time that I joined had about 90,000 members.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there, of which you probably would recognize the names of less than 1%. Wow. Of them, being the name actors that we know. Yep. And the truth of the matter is it was less than 2% of the members of the Screen Actors Guild actually were earning enough to even get their insurance qualifications.
Oh my gosh.
Which meant they were earning more than $12,000 a year.
Oh,
less than 2%. So point being is, as with anything that you pursue, yes, there may be a ton of people at it, but it's, the old adage, the cream rises to the crop. The cream rises to the top.
Rises to the top, right?
Yeah. And so the cream rises to the top. And so the same thing is happening in this world of becoming an authority. Yeah, anybody nowadays could publish your own book, and anybody can start a podcast. But the people who are the movers and the shakers, the visionary solopreneurs, the people that I like to work with, are truly the ones who will rise above, because they are doing it in a way that is, mission oriented, and got a message that is burning to get out to the world. They're not these fly by nights, but they really want to, get the word out. And so those are the ones who will rise to the top.
Yeah. Okay. And I love what you're saying, right? That it's mission oriented, and there's a message, and that, in a way feels burning, like, okay, I have to get this out in the world, or it's coming through me. A lot of the men I talk to, we talk a lot about the overlap between leadership, love, and legacy, or a kind of personal fulfillment. And I think that message piece, falls under the leadership legacy category, both of those categories, right? Like, yeah. There's this something that's coming through me, a unique gift or a unique perspective that I want to put out in the world to serve others, but it's also really fulfilling for me to do that. And you spoke about the art of getting out there. And so I'm curious, right? What is the art, or how does that, yeah, I've got 12 questions. Let's start with that one.
Sure. So the way I kind of look at it is like this. There are a lot of solopreneurs out there. And again, let me just define that real quickly. For me, a solopreneur, you may still have a team working for you, but you are your brand, your name, your business. You are the face, the brand. And there are many solopreneurs out there who are creating little bits and parts. They might learn a cool strategy about, oh, hey, I should do this, or oh, hey, I should do that. Let me try this for a little bit, do a webinar or do Facebook Live. And they're creating lots of little parts, but they're not creating the machine. It would be like if you're going to build, you build a tire, and then you build a steering wheel. Then you build a door.
It's not coming together as a car.
Right, but you haven't put it together as a car. which is your mode of transportation. And so that's where I consider it the art. It's like, okay, let's look at what is the bigger machine I want to create.
Mm-hmm.
And here are the integral parts of it that are going to be necessary to really have this machine transport me. And in this case, that transportation is to take you to becoming the authority.
Right.
And so when you implement those 4 foundational pillars correctly, they all play together so well that it really does, it's like a skyrocket towards having your name become synonymous with your subject matter.
Right. Okay. And now for a man who's just getting started, what would you say is a first step, right? I think there are these 4 foundational pillars you work with, but I imagine even to be ready to take advantage of those pillars, there's got to be a sense of, how you actually get in touch with your vision or craft your message or things like that.
Yeah. And, the way that I frame things in the world of building authority, I always start with podcasting because it has a minimal barrier to entry. There's not a lot of cost involved with it, and you don't really have to, you're not a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist to do it. It's getting it out there. But I love what you're saying about this, Shane, is that where you really want to start is what is your message? And that you definitely have to define, but even more so, and this is something that's very important that I found with, training people, even in just starting a podcast, is that what is it that you're going to be able to market? Because you may want to just spread a message to the world. But the truth is, if you don't find a way to make money doing that, then at some point you're not going to be able to spread your message as much because you're going to have to work. You've got to make a living.
Right.
Unless you're independently wealthy and have a trust fund or something. I don't know. But so I really want to be sure that people who are starting this, like, okay, well, here's your message. Now, is there a way that we can monetize that message? Is there people who are willing to pay for something that you have to offer? And so we kind of start there and say, okay, so this is what you're going to offer. Now, who is the audience that will want to buy that?
Yes. Okay. Can you give us some examples too of, clients you've worked with who have a message and then you've helped them figure out, okay, here's how we'll monetize it and who the audience is?
Yeah, of course. So, and let me even just preface by saying I kind of made a mistake with it myself when I launched my first podcast, Speaking, because I didn't do it this way.
Okay.
I started to grow an audience, but I really had nothing to sell them because my mission when I first started was I'm just going to spread the word of conscious living. But I was not really, selling anything in that realm.
Right.
And so now what I would teach people, let's say, for instance, and I have one of my clients who is a relationship coach. And the thing about what she does is she coaches clients, of course, in relationships, but I really helped her to dive into, okay, well, let's be even more specific about it. Other than, and this is a key element too, is I want to teach people to scale, is that you can only handle so many clients. If you're looking for clients on a one-on-one basis, you can only handle so many hours in a week that you're going to be able to work. So if you want to scale that, can you create a group program?
Yeah.
And if you can, is this group program going to be more of interest to couples who are already together and maybe experiencing trouble? Or is it going to be more geared towards someone who is looking to be in a relationship? And so really you start to dial those elements in. And then when it comes to your podcast, so now let's say you've got it dialed in. Let's say you deal with relationships, but you deal with people who are going through a rough patch. Okay, so now we start to nail that in. So then you start to look at, okay, so I can create a group program to help people get beyond the rough patch. Now, who are the people who are going to want to listen to that? Obviously, people going through that, but where are you going to find them? And this is where a big learning, and then of course now training that I had for myself, is that sometimes what you talk about in your podcast may not be the area of expertise that you're selling people into.
Say more about that.
Okay, so, and my new podcast is a prime example of that. So as I said, I made a mistake kind of with my first one, and then I wasn't growing the audience that I was serving. in the respect of what I had something to sell to. However, now because I have dialed in who it is I'm serving visionary solopreneurs and helping them to grow their platform.
Mm-hmm.
My new podcast is called Buy This, Not That. I review technology and I review training programs. I don't sell a technology, and my training program is irrelevant to the ones that I review. I mean, I may review somebody who teaches how to do webinars or someone who teaches list building. But the point is that I know that this new podcast I've created will attract visionary solopreneurs. Then once I've grown this audience during my podcast, of course, I can promote my own programs.
Right. It's complementary, right?
Exactly.
Like they come in for this need and then they realize, oh, in addition to the technology and trainings, I actually need support in crafting my message, figuring out who this is for, and becoming an authority.
Exactly. And so it's I love the word that you use there, complementary. And so that's where your podcast doesn't even necessarily have to be anything. And by the way, it's not even necessarily my area of expertise. So I'm reviewing stuff, but I'm there asking questions as though I know nothing about it. So
I see.
Yeah, if I review mail serving companies, like Aweber and MailChimp and Mad Mimi, I'm reviewing them and talking to them about what they do and how they do it and who they serve, but I don't have to be an expert in that subject matter.
Right? Yeah. And what about a man who, again, is getting started and is considering a podcast, but maybe not wanting to do a podcast or not wanting that to be the first step? I mean, is it always the first step you recommend, or are there other first steps in these pillars?
You can, it's like anything, you can build it in multiple directions, but I consider it foundational simply because it is one of the easiest things to do. Again, there's a very low cost of entry and low time consumption. I mean, I launched my first podcast within 14 days of even learning what one was.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like there's nothing stopping you. And I recommend it because it can sit there running in the background. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's the other thing that stops a lot of people is they try to have it perfect right out of the gate.
Right.
Not even the TV shows that we watch. If you fall in love with a series, and especially if you've been watching one that's maybe gone 10 years, I challenge you to go back and watch one of the early episodes. And you'll be amazed at how bad it looks compared to, simply because, you may have fallen in love with it right at the beginning, but it's gotten so good by the 10th season that if you look at the early ones, you're going to go, oh my God, I can't believe I liked it at that point.
Right. Well, and I can relate to that. I mean, that is one of the things that could stop me and sometimes has me feel hesitant is this is not perfect in any way, shape, or form. And I don't always like how I sound or what I say, but at the same time, I think those of us who do have a message or, a vision for the world, I believe we have to be willing to, look stupid or inadequate or whatever our fears are, that we actually have to go beyond that to be willing to make that mission or message more important than how we look or, how things come out.
Yeah, you're spot on with it.
Yeah.
And you will get better over time, and it just will continue to grow. And the cool thing about a podcast is now it's out there. Now people start finding you. It can be a slow process. And so again, that's why I suggest get it out there while you're doing other stuff.
Right. I like that.
Yeah.
Right. You could be writing a book, or you could be, creating all these other things, but you're doing that in your office where nobody's reading it. So, right, you're building your platform as you're doing something like that.
Right. And here's the kind of just a little side story of why and how it all evolved for myself.
Yeah.
I've had a book idea for years, and I was approached by a major publishing company, and through, I was introduced through a friend of mine who was a published author with them, and he liked my book idea. And so they liked it as well. And they said, can you fill out this acquisitions questionnaire for us? And so I'm filling it out, and as I'm reading through it, some of the questions were, how big is your Facebook following?
Right.
Twitter followers do you have? How big is your mailing list? And it made me start to realize, wait a minute, they want me to sell the book.
Right. I've heard that recently,
Yeah.
they're not doing the selling anymore. The publishers are really looking for your platform to be in place.
Exactly.
Right.
And so it made me realize, oh, wait a minute, I should not start with the book. I should start with the platform and really start to build that. And then here's the other piece of it as well, is that now, with my show, Consciously Speaking, having over 340 episodes, I've really honed my message more.
Right.
And sometimes material comes up and I go, oh, this will make a great chapter for my book.
Oh,
And,
nice.
And so, so I'm kind of writing the book in the process of doing the podcast and the virtual summits and speaking from stage, developing the signature talk. All of these things feed into and actually can create the manuscript for the book. So you
and
see
what
how
about, I'm totally seeing how this works too. And I'm just wondering, I have a friend who wrote a book and, has been disappointed, I would say, and kind of struggling to get the book read. And so I'm wondering if we can look at it from that angle too. What would you suggest if someone has already written a book and wants to build this platform or become an authority? It sounds like you would say, again, start with a podcast.
Well, I would say if they've already got the book written, now start a podcast. And if you don't believe the value of what I'm saying about this, look at people who have podcasts now. And podcasts, by the way, have been around, I think it's a little under 20 years even. But look at who has podcasts now. People who don't need them, at least you wouldn't think. Deepak Chopra, Tony Robbins, Byron Katie, Eckhart Tolle.
They all have podcasts. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, they all have podcasts. And it's because even they know the value of it, even though they're already published authors and they're already doing quite well. They're already well-established authorities, but they know the value of the podcast.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so I would say if you've already got your book, now start a podcast, because that will give you a platform upon which to start to sell the book too. And then live events. I pre-sold my book at live events. You just go there and you talk about it, and boom, people start signing up for it. So
nice.
All of it kind of plays really nicely together. And when you build this blueprint in this fashion, and here's the thing of it, and I'm not saying that this is the best way to do it, but it is a way to do it. There are people who have taken their podcast and had the interviews and shows transcribed and then edited into a book. So literally, they didn't have to do anything. They simply recorded their vocal stream of conversation and had these transcribed and made into a book that sold.
That sounds amazing.
So it's totally doable.
Do we get to know what the book is that's pre-sold and already coming out, it sounds like?
Yeah. So my book is called The Art of Forgetting. And again, this is the one that I had started with and was approached by a publishing house and, decided, all right, I better build the platform first and then continue massaging the book in the process. And by the way, too, and this is another cool element of doing a podcast, is how it builds your network. And so one of the people that I interviewed on my show, Consciously Speaking, was Tammy Simon.
Oh, nice. I love her.
And she's the CEO of Sounds True, a publishing house. And in our post conversation, she said, when your manuscript's ready, please send me a copy.
Oh, I love it.
So so you can parlay your podcast also into other great networking connections that can be phenomenal. So there's just so much power in all of these elements. When you play them together, it's exponential.
Right. And there's this idea that connection is currency, which makes so much sense to me because, these days, right, putting your resume in, or whether it's applying for a job or, creating something, it's so much about the connections we have. And I found that too with this podcast. It gives me an excuse in a way to reach out to people. Whereas before that, I was a little bit confused when I wanted to reach out to people I admired about what to bring them into, right? Or, how to say, hey, I'd like to do something with you, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. Now it's so clear. Oh, I'd love to have you as a guest on my podcast.
Yeah.
I would, in my own mind, call forgetting less of an art and more of something that I suffer from. So I'm wondering, what's the art of forgetting?
Well, excuse me. The reason I call it the art of forgetting is that we as human beings, we're meaning making machines. Something will happen, and there's the fact of what happened. And let's use an example. Let's say, oh, my girlfriend broke up with me. Okay, that's what happened. Now we can go about making story about it. And one possible story is, oh, women are bitches. That could be one story I could make up. Or I could make up, I'm just
not that lovable. Story very much.
You don't like that? No, I don't either. And it doesn't serve me either.
Right.
But I could also make up the story that I'm just worthless. I'm unlovable.
Yes.
Okay. Which, again, they're all stories. But the point is that we do this day in and day out. We take something that happens factually, and then we create a story around it. And frequently, most of the time, these stories do not serve us.
Yep. And
so the art of forgetting is about kind of dissecting that and, artfully removing the fiction part and sticking with just the facts. And if you really look at just the facts, like I went through a string of relationships where women cheated on me. I was, from age 16 till about 25, maybe even a little older than that. And through this series of women cheating on me, I created the subconscious belief that women cheat. And once I did that, and this is where our mind comes into crazy strong play, because what will happen is your ego that has this underlying belief is afraid to be wrong.
Right.
And therefore, you will start to attract into your life that which will validate what your ego believes. And so I started attracting women who were going to cheat on me. And when I really started to look at it, I go, wait a minute, what's the only common denominator in all of these relationships was me. I really had to start looking at, okay, well, what am I doing over here that's causing this? And that's when I had to really dig it, take it apart and erase the false part of my story. And since doing that, I have not been in a relationship where there's been any infidelity since. And I've had great relationships. So.
Yeah. And I know your current wife and love her. And really, I appreciate the relationship you two are consciously continuing to create over time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So on the thread of authority, what else do you want men to know about, getting out there, expanding their reach, being seen, being known? What feels important?
Yeah, I think the big thing is figure out what your message is, what your purpose is. And I know for myself, I'll just share a quick little story. I went through a bit where I was floundering. So after I decided to no longer be an actor, my son was born in Los Angeles. I was still pursuing my acting career in 2004. I'm sorry, 2002 he was born. And in 2004, I decided to leave LA and stop my acting career. And this, you're talking, I wanted to do that since I was in fourth grade. That's when I knew I wanted to be an actor. And so now here I was going, well, if I'm not an actor, what am I?
Right.
What am I here to do on this planet? And I floundered for several years before finding it. And so I would say a very important thing is to figure out what is that message that you have to get out to the world, and then do what it takes to make that happen. And maybe your purpose is simply to be the best possible parent, the best father, the best husband in the world, and just do that then. But get really in touch with it and know what that is, and then take action.
I like that. And I feel the permission in there in a way that, it may be very big and visible, or it may be something, as a father, right, that you're doing on your own. But I've also seen fathers who become so passionate about the way they're fathering that then they start a blog or, fatherly.com or, right. So it's really interesting too, how I think when we allow ourselves to be passionate about what we're actually passionate about versus, oh, here's who I'm supposed to be in the world, that the mission and the message, I think, comes through that.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And it's funny you mentioned about the fatherly blogs and stuff. There are also podcasts of fathers, and I've,
Right.
on some of those too. And it's just whatever you find it is that you want to do, just do it,
Mm.
Yeah.
Which is exciting. And, I've worked with a lot of men who they are still, or they've felt stuck in this idea of, or in the box, I guess I would say, of other people's expectations, who their parents wanted them to be, who their partners wanted them to be, who they believed, based on these societal roles and what success looks like, who they're supposed to be. So I love how this feels not only like a path to authority, but a path to that inner fulfillment, right? As we were talking about before, and where that overlaps.
Yeah, I love, Shana, that you said the expectations that our families have of us. One of the chapters in my book is called Great Expectations. And it's the idea that we are guided by both conscious and subconscious expectations that are either put on us by our parents or society, and then ultimately even on ourselves.
Yep.
And that we kind of become, to a large degree, operating on autopilot.
Yeah, I was thinking like a slave to those expectations without even realizing it.
Yeah, exactly. And they can be very subtle. I mean, if you've ever noticed how when you go home, I noticed this for myself whenever I would travel back to my family in Missouri, that I would behave a certain way. And it was because they had an expectation of me. This is who they knew me to be, even though I may have changed dramatically living thousands of miles away, but they had a certain expectation, and therefore I would live into that.
Yes.
And we do that so much in life, and that's part of the art of forgetting, is also about letting go of the expectations we hold other people in so that they can then be revealed in their full possibility.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you. This has been a powerful conversation and something I haven't done before, around men getting their message out and their visions out. And what would you like to, besides how men can find you, do you have a last, inspiration or tip or tool or anything that you'd like to leave men with?
Yeah, well, I would say, for one, if you're considering this as a possibility, that you check out my material. I've got my website, yourauthorityblueprint.com, but more importantly, if they were to go to michaelneely.com/manalive, they can get some details about my upcoming event, which is Your Authority Blueprint Live. And at this event, we're going to be going over all of this material about how to grow your authority and how to build that blueprint. And even part of it will be about digging into getting out what that message is. So if you're curious and looking into that, please go check it out. That's michaelneely.com/manalive. And you will, even if you want to come to the event, I do have what I call scholarship seats available, which mean you will get in for free. And there would be normally it's a $197 seat deposit that you get back at the door. But if you use the code I'll have on that page as well, which is Man Alive, you'll get $100 even off of your seat deposit, meaning just $97, and you get that back at the door.
And you get it back. So they're just paying just to hold their seat, and then when they attend, they get it back.
Exactly. And that's June 25th, 26th, and 27th in Monterey, California.
That's my birthday.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, happy birthday. We're giving everybody a birthday gift.
Go to Michael's event for my birthday. I love it.
And get $100 savings.
Awesome.
And it's just a beautiful hotel right there in the ocean. So you can also have some fun while you're at it and get to meet some other people who are also up to some really crazy, cool, worthwhile stuff in the world.
I love that too, right? Because that ties it back to connection and what we were talking about. I've been finding more and more that, as a single mom, there's something about being behind my computer in my office that's actually really convenient, and we can create connections all around the world at this point, without leaving our houses, which is amazing. But I've also been finding more and more that, meeting people in person and stepping out and going to conferences and things like that, especially if you have a vision or a message, is a powerful way to meet people who have visions aligned with yours. And, who want to support you, and you get to support, and things start to happen, like you talking to Tammy Simon, who then says, when your manuscript is done, send it to me,
Yeah.
So all of those things get to happen.
Absolutely. It's funny that you say that, because I even teach that in my podcasting course that I have, is that, go to as many live events as you can.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of what I consider an audience growth hack for podcasters, because
nice.
that you go to, everybody you meet's a potential new listener.
Right.
And I always give out cards representing my show and say, hey, give it a listen, check it out. And yeah, maybe most people will try it one time and may not subscribe, but the point is that you're getting more exposure, and that you will get some subscribers from it who will be regulars of your show now.
Right. And who actually will pass it on to other people as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this today. And I highly recommend checking out Michael's event if you have a vision, if you have a message, or if you are getting a sense from listening to this that you are living inside of other people's expectations, and you realize, wow, there's something that's starting to stir in me. Maybe there is a message in there. Maybe there is a vision I have that I haven't quite tapped into yet. So definitely recommend that. And thank you, Michael, for being with us today.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. I love what you're up to in the world. Such a valuable podcast that you've created here for men out there who are really looking to find ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.